Hello and welcome to Warblog. Um, yeah, so it's a sort of new development type video. I've developed something, but I haven't really developed it quite. Essentially, just to get straight to it, irregular units and insurgents. And I've plonked them in this man game. You'll see that they're both in that stack now. Now I've not put them in this game. They're not really supposed to be there, but I thought I just browsed through. I thought which one would be sort of relevant. Yeah, so they seem to work. So there's the two units. So, and I basically struggled for quite a while to figure out what best sort of symbology to use. In the end, I opted for the same sort of symbology used for special forces. You know, so there's a little box and it says IN for insurgents and IR for irregulars. Now, I think I've covered irregulars before. I'm pretty sure they're in the rules. They still don't work, and they still don't work at the moment, but the counters are there, and I hope the next thing I'm going to do is be able to cover these. It was either that or the air power, air defense, and I'll probably do that later, you know, sort of put airplanes on air patrol, and they counter any sort of enemy aircraft. I think that's going to be not really that difficult, but it's just, you know, I've got such limited time, and I'd rather just write the scenarios, to be quite honest, at this stage. You know, over time, you know, I would sort of develop it, you know, as a sort of make clear is my intention, but it's going to take a long time regardless. So, but anyway, so I'm just sort of covering these, and just so that you can maybe get a closer look. No, don't move that. Why is everything in the way? Well, I was going to show you. I was going to show you the things. The what's it's. Oh, I'll have to move the screen. I don't like doing this because otherwise it does actually stay where it should be. Okay, let's see if this does it. So there's the big unit. It's in my Photoshop thingy, and as you can see, I mean I've zoomed it in really far. I don't know what's going to be the best resolution to look at it. You can see what it is. I mean, obviously it's the high end, but this is nice as unit, of course. And the first number, insurgents don't have any movement. Sorry, any strength, so they can't attack anything. They can defend themselves, and that's a very generous defensive factor of 1. Really, I might even reconsider that and give them 0. And they've got a movement of 5, so they do move around the map just like normal units. And I'll just show you the other one. The irregulars are actually normal units in traditional sense. They just have some particular skill sets. I will cover these just now. Let me just sort of go back to the site and maybe see if I can move this screen back up so it's sort of where I want it to be. Okay, I think that will do. So essentially, I'll cover insurgents first because I think I've covered irregulars, and so if I lose time, it won't be such a big deal. Because I know I can talk forever about nothing. I won't start talking about nothing now, though. Basically, insurgents. So what they do, they basically blow things up. I've chosen this one because I sort of thought, well, maybe they can do some insurgent type activity. Now I'm not sure exactly what this will all encompass, But basically they will be able to essentially, and this is where I haven't got, this is the sort of next steps. They move, and they can say move to there. They'll be able to move through zones of controls, but now they can do two things on this. They can move into it, and I'm not going to do it because if I move into it, it'll just come up with this combat screen. But when I move into that unit, because there's a unit there, it will, well, I don't know what it will do because I haven't read it yet, but the idea is that you'll be able to do an offensive action against that unit. So that offensive action will be something, basically in this scenario, a car bomb. But it could be something, anything. It could be just a sort of discrete mortar attack, not something that a large unit is doing. It could be an ambush or a kidnapping. It's basically an offensive action that you commonly associate with insurgents or terrorists or these sorts of units, and that's what it's really trying to sort of cover. So, and I'm not sure exactly how they're going to work out, but the whole idea, just to sort of give you an idea exactly what I'm thinking about doing, is they will then be able to attack that unit basically. So we're not worrying about what they do against that unit, but they will be able to assault that unit, using their special skill sets. And depending on the factors, they will do it. Now, it's a sort of different type of process. So, but because I'm trying to keep everything really super simple, it will just create depressions. I'm not going to have any. They're not going to lose strength or become, things like that. When I get morale in, it will probably be a cause for a morale check. But basically, they'll sort of roll on some kind of table. It will probably be exactly the same because most of these types of attacks, a car bomb is a car bomb. It's not as though you can, I suppose you can have like multiple car bombs. You can have multiple insurgent units, and but basically, the factors are going to be pretty much the same. If they set up a car bomb, in the garrison of this unit or where this unit is in proximity to a sentry box or something like that, it's not so much that it's going to cause physical damage to lots of people, although there will be sort of possibly significant numbers of casualties. You could blow up sort of 20 soldiers, and that's actually fairly significant in relation to how many soldiers might be lost in combat. It could be higher. So but the thing is, they will carry out some sort of action, and that will result in an increase in fatigue or depression or whatever you want to call it. I can't even remember what it is now. It's just their sort of their hit points. I call it depressions, but try to change it to to disruptions, and then to fatigues or whatever. It's all the same. It's their. I just call it the disruptions. But anyway, so but there's not so much the secret, but the sort of the thing that I think is not so much clever, but for sake of argument, it's clever. It will always cause 3 fatigues. Now the significance of that is you will never be able to recover beyond the 1, because if you can recover 2. I always have difficulty explaining it. It's a simple enough concept, but to explain it just sounds like I'm not doing very well. So it's pretty simple. So basically, if they were to attack that unit, if they were successful, and I think it's going to be just a sort of maybe a 50-50 or a 20%, or I don't know. It'll be some sort of percentage that will be standard for all units, for all insurgent units. If they're successful, now it could be a difference in factors. So for example, if they're 1, it could be 50% success rate. If there are 2, 40%. I just thought of that now. So something like that. Just something to sort of scale it. So it's going to be pretty hard to do against a bigger unit. And it'd be against the defensive factor as well, I guess. So basically, if they get their factor, so in this one it'll be a 50% chance of success because they're 1 factor, then they will lose 3 depressions. Now the point of that is quite significant, really, because if you can keep doing that with your insurgent units, then you have quite a toolkit, against the regular soldiers, and essentially. Well, I'm not entirely sure exactly how it's all going to work through, but I think there's going to be some kind of, you'll only be able to do it once per turn, but then you'll be able to run away, again going through zones of control, and probably phase a lot of these sort of abilities in. I just want to get it working so that it does something, and the start for that is actually creating the counters. But basically they will be able to. There's another important thing that I will get onto. That's sort of fairly key to what they do. But they'll be able to. What am I talking about now? I know. I'll just carry on. I'll figure it out. Basically, they yeah. So they can go in there, cause the damage, and then run off, and they get 3 fatigues, which they will not be able to recover from. So if they can do it multiple times, you can actually really hammer the target unit prior to, say, regular assaults. Now here's the sort of the crunch in the sort of the thing that I thought, well, this is actually making it a little more interesting, and that's that they can actually attack objective hexes. So if I was to move into, if I move the mouse around for a bit, if I was to move into Morek, nothing would happen because Morek's not an objective. But this place is an objective, and if you look at it, it's worth 20. Now, basically, if this unit wasn't here, so if this unit had moved out, for example, now the insurgent unit cannot take this unit, or maybe it can. I don't know. I still not. But basically, the bottom line is when they attack this hex, I think, but basically that they will attack the objective as well. So if I send, so basically, if you imagine it as it's sort of, it's a replication. If it's a car bomb, this objective will slowly go over. I mean, it will stop being a Syrian army objective because they keep getting blown up. And although it's not sort of a perfect reflection of how car bombs work, because they probably hate ISIS as much as anything, but they will be in a state where they will be a lot easier to, basically, maybe less supportive of the people that they are, sort of supporting and are supposedly defending them. So basically, you'll be able to do that. So in essence, an insurgent assault on a unit, for example, in this instance, will do a few things. You can pepper them up before you sort of go in and invade, but you can also sort of slowly, bit by bit, reduce the value of the objective hex below it, and that's going to be sort of quite a significant factor. So, for example, I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I was thinking either a percentage, like 10%. So in this case 2 or 5, because if it's a massive city it'd be quite a lot, but here, although it's worth 20, it's doubled because it's got to go from 20 through to 0 through to minus 20. So that would be, if every time he sort of did a car bomb, if every time he drove a car bomb in there, that would have to be 8 car bombs, 8 attacks. It could be whatever other forms of attack, 8 attacks onto here, and basically this will then come over to the other side. This will become an ISIS objective. Now that's not how it really works, but the thing is that's the principle. So you can get it sort of pretty much there and pepper it up. The thing that's sort of intriguing in my mind's eye to some extent is sort of see how it plays out, and I imagine it'd be incredibly boring to play an insurgent game, but you could probably do quite a bit of damage, and it would be a serious hindrance to the way things work. Now, if you attack an insurgent unit, they will basically just retreat. They will evade in combat in the same way that the irregulars work. I've completely run out of time. I might do another video, but I've covered irregulars before, but we've got the counters now. Here's the regular unit, just as a reminder. They can run away as well. They will, if they, and also just quickly, a few seconds left, if they were to attack into this hex here, they're only a factor of 2, but because they're an irregular and this is less than 5, they get an assault value of 5. So they actually get 5 to 1 here, and this is because this is sort of time's up. Okay, so I will turn my attention now to the regular units. I think I've sort of covered some of this before, but so again, there's their unit. They behave more just like regular infantry. Just a little thing about the insurgents. If they're attacked, basically there's going to be a percentage that they'll just run away. So whatever, so basically I think it'll be about sort of 90% or maybe 80% chance they'll just run away or get the equivalent of a retreat option. But if they don't, then you kill them because they've got, well, if they have defense of 0, which I'm thinking of doing, you'll get a 7 to 1 because they're not a fighting unit. With regards to the irregulars, they work just like normal troops, except, I don't think I've read this in the rules, I'm just doing this from memory, but if they attack, they attack at 5. If they attack a stack with more than 5 defense, then they don't get that bonus. I'm also going to, I haven't figured out exactly how, but I'm going to do it so that they attack on their own. So if you've got like lots of troops surrounding a particular unit and you use one of the normal units to do an assault, then you will only get the option of using the normal units. You won't be able to use the irregulars in that. Or maybe you will, I don't know. But if they attack on their own, so you will have the option to attack on their own. So maybe if you were, yeah. Still making it all up as we go along, but trying. I mean, it's obviously proof coming eating for the pudding, so to speak. But essentially, so if you've got lots of units, so if there was a unit here, and I attacked with this motorized unit, I can attack into there and I would get everything. But if I was to attack with this irregular unit into there, by selecting the irregular unit, it would assume that I only want to do an irregular assault. So that would be sort of, they would be laying an ambush, doing like a commando operation. Speaking of which, maybe I'll give that feature, that ability to the special forces as well. They're doing something that is sort of something a bit sneaky, and maybe even the special forces will get the 5 up as well, because they're sort of, regulars and special forces are probably similar in context, not in technology. So maybe the special forces will get an upgrade to 7 or 8, if the unit is small. So that's basically that. If there's a unit, so if I had a big tank unit here and I went there, moved into the irregular space, then just like in the insurgents I just described, they would basically have a very high chance of just retreating, but it wouldn't be as high as 90%. Probably about 50%. So 50% of the time, the irregulars would actually just evade because they're a small unit. And so that's pretty much that. Now, I'm not going to be doing this immediately, but I think hopefully I'm going to try and get it done at some point. It's going to take some programming. But putting the units in is the first step, and so that's that. I would really, really like to be able to get both of these things done as soon as possible, because I think especially with the way things are, there's scope for actually doing a lot more um, doing a lot more with scenarios to reflect the broader sense of modern warfare, and in particular, I'm thinking of things where there's like a civil war. I mean, I'm looking at the Somalia thing at the moment, and the particular aspect of that particular sort of situation is probably more conventional, so it doesn't really apply. But as I read around that period, there's so many more operations where there's a sort of war. I mean, I think actually what I'm picking up on here is there is actually quite a lot of there is actually a war in Somalia at the moment, and no one's really reporting on it, and no one reported on 1991. I went through the whole of the Times newspaper, and in the entire year 1990 it mentioned Somalia 3 times in regards to the conflict, and each one of those was no more than 20 words. And one of them was the fall of the Bar regime, in 20 words. The surrounding of Mogadishu in 20 words, and there's a civil war, sort of, about September in 20 words. There's a few articles on the famine and things like that, but it was quite a major military engagement in the sense that it was the Somalian the rebels are actually armed with the Somali equipment, so they had tanks and things. Tanks were being knocked out. It wasn't just sort of typical insurgent activity. But at the moment, what's happening now, which I've been looking at, is we'll actually get this over here. This is something else, but I'm looking at this. I've never seen this site before, and it's quite interesting. But it's basically entitled Somali Civil War, and I thought, is this sort of like some sort of tweet action from how it was? But no, this is actually happening now. And if you go back all the way to the top, day 1, truck loaded with explosives captured by security forces in Mogadishu, Somalia. And I thought, is this sort of how it used to be? But it's not. Day 9, unidentified jets shell an al-Shabaab military camp in Somalia's town. Death toll, Somalia car bombs, so that would be an insurgent activity. Police say 10 people killed in suicide bombing, insurgent activity. Police say 5 soldiers killed in car bomb, insurgent activity. Etc. If you just go through this, it seems like a massive chronology of what's happening right now. This was actually on the 30th of August. Clouds of smoke seen following explosions in Somalia's capital. Somali al-Shabaab militants attacked restaurant. Now, basically, what I'm sort of saying is that when I get these units in place, it will be interesting to see whether or not I can actually, I don't want to say model, but in basic model that type of activity, whether or not because it might not be sort of effective for the Somali military to actually chase the insurgents, and there might be so many of them that this repeated sort of use of car bombs and things like that will actually be effective in reducing the morale of the military and the towns. So again, as I sort of explained, they'll be able to reduce this number and almost capture places just by using car bombs. I'm not sure whether I'm going to allow them to actually capture a place if there's military presence. But the thing is, what you've got to remember, if the insurgents were to attack this village and then they were to reduce it from 20 to 15, I suppose they get 5, the unit in there, when it had its turn, it would then use its power to reduce it back up to 16 because it's worth 1, and then the next turn 17, so it slowly start to recover, but that's only because it's got 1 unit. So if it had a 6-point unit, it would recover So if it had a strong military presence, they would not be able to basically reduce the the objective value of this village significantly. But that's the nature of the game. I mean, you might be you don't want to necessarily tie your resources up just to sort of keep repairing the damage from the insurgent thing. So I'm basically hoping that we'll be able to do that, because there's no sort of actual major reports of military action. It's not as though they're I mean, in Syria, the rebels actually have tanks, and they're sort of fairly well organised, etc., etc. But I think in Somalia, it's more sort of they don't really have tanks or very strong military, and it really is just a case of these bombs. I don't know what's behind it, but the thing is, what surprises me most about that is that that was the first I read of it. In fact, it was so much the first I read of it, I thought it had to be an account, in retrospect, of the 1990 Civil War. And the 1990 Civil War didn't start in 1990. I mean, it started in 1980. For 10 years. It's a bit odd, really, because they've been doing it, for that sort of that period. It was only until 1990 when the Barr regime suddenly started to really sort of like retaliate against the rebel units by bombing cities and killing lots of people, and blowing up water wells and killing camels and things like this. That the people just really got determined to sort of overthrow the regime, and that's what they did. And I just thought that was that period. I mean, you see these things from the First World War. They sort of they tweet as though they were they're a soldier in the First World War, or things like that. And but I've not read anything. I quite often look on the BBC website. I mean, it's just typical of the BBC, I think. And there's just no reporting. I look at Africa, and I've never read it. I've never seen that there's all this activity going on in Somalia right now. And so it's that's the nature of modern media, really. And they're just reporting it, and reporting whatever they want for their own purposes, really. I mean, that's got to be what's happening. I can't say that is necessarily the truth, because I don't really want to move these tabs around, because this should all be in the right on thing. But I did then go and look at this. So, and it is actually BBC reports Somalia attack, twin car bombs explode in Mogadishu airport, 26th of July. So they are reporting on it. I'm not trying to say they're not. It's just I hadn't read it, and I usually look at this little button here that says Africa, and when you click on it, well, we got UK MPs decry UK-French Libya campaign. I don't want to start thinking about that, but Johannesburg, Africa Live, Cat's flight resumed to Somalia, Boko Haram kills Niger soldiers, Nigeria's Nollywood Paralympic stars, Africa highlights detained Congolese warlord ready to die, South Africa bars anti-gay US pastor, Ebola sculptor denies statue mocks Mugabe. Now there is obviously a reference there to Somalia about flights resuming. So I'm not saying that they're not, but it just felt like it, and I'm pretty sure that they're not covering it as extensively as maybe the breaking news thing is. I mean, this is just really significant. Keep loading more, but it goes all the way up to now. There's so much happening. Anyway, I've managed to speak again 15 minutes on total nonsense, but I had to do it. I've only just got up again, so I'm feeling a little less tired now. I looked at it and I thought, oh god, I either just don't do it or I do it now. So I've covered both of these new things. As I said, I'll hopefully get them both in play shortly. And, it might not happen for a while. I've just got so much to do. But that's my objective in the next thing. And that's hopefully you'll make another angle into doing some of these more obscure insurgent-based conflicts. Okay, well, I hope you enjoy that, and I'll